Welcome to the world's fastest monthly wrap-up. At least I hope it's the world's fastest monthly wrap-up because I'm filming this late and I'm getting ready to go on a trip for the weekend, so I've got to be able to edit it fast. So we're going to very quickly talk about all the books I read in the month of July. Luckily for me, there were not that many. I only read 5 books. My average rating was a 3.1, which is not terrible, but not great. So I didn't have as great of a reading month as I did in June, but it was okay. It was fine. I made some progress on some series, which is what I am the most proud of. And I did end up having one 5-star book, which is always fun. Starting with my least favorite book of the month, it was a, should I say, highly anticipated book? Sort of. It was anticipated, but I wasn't anticipating that I was going to love it because of my track record. It is The Unknown by Riley Sager. I think this book's actually coming out today as I'm filming this. This is like his 10th or 11th book now. I've read everything from Riley Sager and I've had all kinds of experiences with his works, but I feel like the last couple of years I just haven't really been enjoying them as much. But I'm always curious. I have FOMO. I look forward to reading a Riley Sager book every summer. There's just something exciting about that because I have this nostalgia of like looking forward to it and then, you know, sometimes enjoying them and usually just having a good time listening to the discussions about them because they are so popular. I just enjoy seeing what everyone's thinking about and having my own take on them as well. Unfortunately, this was my least favorite book of the month. I actually did record a reading vlog as I was reading this book, but then I just felt like I didn't really want to put it out because I didn't have a lot of great things to say, and that's not a very exciting way to have an early release video go out before the book is out. I just felt like it wasn't going to be a good vibe, so I didn't put that up. This book is about these women who are all cast in this movie that's going to be about this historical event where all these women went missing on this island all these years ago, and they were said to be witches that all disappeared. So they're putting together this movie that's going to be kind of like a witchy what happened version of events that is based on the diary entries from one of the people that was on the island back in the day. The main character of the book that you're following is cast in this with like a bunch of famous people, like a Disney Channel star, this actress who's been around for decades and decades, a famous director, and she's a nobody. She's had like a commercial here or there, but she has not had a chance to have a big break. So she's also confused about why she was even cast in this to begin with. So there's a little bit of an unsettling vibe for that. And they are all going out to the actual island to get immersed in their characters for a week before the filming actually begins. And they're supposed to like dress the way their characters or the people would have really dressed and reenact some things that happened on the island. So it's like dual timeline, what happened in the past, what's happening now, and how is it connected kind of mystery. I ended up giving this book a 2-star. There were a lot of things that I didn't really like about it. It really felt like an earlier draft to me. I feel like it needed another round or two of just going through and like cleaning up and making more interesting and making the writing better. The whole story just felt a bit flat to me. I didn't feel like these characters were very well developed, and there was a particular thing I was looking for in the story because when you often read these books about women and witches and historical events and whatnot, there's like a feminism angle that's almost always tied with witches that was heavily missing in this book. And there's sort of a reason why that I don't want to get too far into, but I just didn't like the way that it was done, that it was lacking so much of that the characters just felt so flat and empty to me. And then again, I don't want to get too into the weeds of it because I don't want to, you know, spoil anything. But one of the elements that is explained in the end of the book is just really iffy territory, really iffy grounds. And I was like, that is really interesting because you have 2 explanations. You have here's what happened in the past, here's what happened in the future. And one of them is kind of like pushing itself in a certain direction, and the other one really contrasts that in terms of themes and like what your book's trying to say and what kind of story you're trying to create. It's like those 2 things just feel like they don't go together. It feels like you're falling into some tropes that I just, in general, don't like to see in mystery books, but especially when you try to like pair it with this other storyline that's going on. I know I'm being vague, but I feel like if you've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I'm interested to see what more people think of this. I am, of course, going to be watching the book club discussions that'll be live. I think this is Gabby's book club pick because she always does the Riley Sager in the summer too. So I'm excited to see that and just hear what more people think about the book. It's always a big topic with the Riley Sager book, so it'll be interesting to see. But this one was not a hit for me, and I think it's also really finally reconfirmed how I will be thinking about Riley Sager's books going forward if he's going to continue to publish a book every year. I think I've just accepted that his books are like geared towards a commercial audience people who aren't reading every single thriller. Not that I'm reading every single thriller, but you know, I'm very well read in the thriller genre. I have maybe like higher expectations. I'm looking for more complexity. I'm looking for more depth. I'm looking for, you know, a really nice writing style paired on top of an entertaining thriller plot. And I just don't think that's what he's doing anymore, which is fine. I'm sure I'll continue reading his stuff just because I feel like once I've read everything from an author, it's hard to break from that. But I just have a new way of looking at his books. Next is a nonfiction memoir type of book that I read called Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come, An Introvert's Guide to Saying Yes More or something. It has a very long title. This was my in-person book club pick for the month, and not very many people liked it. And I didn't really like it either. I ended up giving it a 2.5 star rating, but even that's probably a little bit high. I did listen to this one on an audiobook, which I think actually gave me a better experience of just like listening to this person telling their story, which is funny because a lot of the complaints about this book from my book club and then just reviews I've been seeing online is they do not like this woman. They just find her really unlikable. The woman who wrote this book, I didn't really find her that unlikable. I think there's certain, you know, areas where she maybe paints herself as a little judgmental, especially in like the second half of the book. But I wasn't really thinking about that when I was reading the book. It's basically the stories coming from the perspective of this woman who says she's an introvert and she wants to figure out how to get on the other side of that. And so she spends a year doing all these activities, pushing herself outside of the box. And I just didn't really like it that much. I feel like she is a very normal person. She doesn't come across as like a true introvert because the things that she's doing in the book so casually, like she just signs up for improv comedy and is like, wait, I love improv comedy. And then she like builds a whole stand-up routine, is like doing this comedy and getting really into it. It's like, oh my God, I could have always loved this. That just does not feel like something that a true introvert would just like so readily jump into. And she's just having all of these like immediately deep conversations with people. So that was like my main criticism, is it didn't feel like it was really coming from the perspective of an introvert. It feels like it's just coming from a generally normal, relatively reserved person who's like pretty average. And also it sets itself up like, oh, but there's nothing wrong with being an introvert. So I don't want to say that extroverts are like the goal and being an introvert's bad, but like kind of that is the story she tells through the writing. And it feels like that's the conclusion that she's kind of coming to by the end. I also just didn't love the organization of the book. It felt a little bit like it was lacking structure, kind of was like meandering a little bit, didn't feel like it had the most focus. So yeah, I just didn't love it. My book club didn't love it. It's not a book that I would have picked out for myself. It was a book that I read with the book club, and then it was just, it was like not bad to listen to an audiobook, but yeah, nothing memorable to me. Now moving into the books I did enjoy, the first one is That Night by Gillian McAllister. This is the third or fourth book I've read from her at this point, and I have a pretty good track record of enjoying her books. She writes mystery thrillers, and they usually are kind of like high stakes, and they pose these big questions in the themes. And for this one, the big question is, how far would you go to protect your family? It's a story that follows these three siblings who are very close. They're adult siblings. They've always been very close. They work together. They live right beside each other. They vacation together. And while they're on vacation together, something ends up happening and all the siblings come together to help cover up a crime for one of the siblings. And it follows the drama that ensues after that event. And there's also a secondary timeline that is like small spurts that's happening in the present day where there's a court case going on. So, you know, they weren't able to keep the secret fully underground. Something happens, something comes out, but you don't know the full details of like what's going on in the courtroom. So that drives a little bit of the tension and the suspense in the story as well. I ended up giving this book a 3-star. I would say it reads like a family drama more so than a thriller. So much of it is focused on the drama between these siblings and the tension between the characters after this event happens. I don't really have a lot more to say about this book because it's not super plot heavy. It's more just the tension and the drama and seeing what's going to shake out between these characters. But I found it to be a very just fun, quick, easy read like I usually feel about this author's books, and I will definitely keep reading more from her. I also have a copy of Caller Unknown, which I don't know if that one came out yet or is coming out. I also don't know if That Night, I had an arc of this as well. I don't know if that was coming out for the first time in July or if it's already been out in the UK and they're like redoing it. I don't know the whole situation with her books, but I will keep reading more from her because I find them to be just enjoyable, easy reads. Next up is another 3-star book that I had, and that was The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. This is the second book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I recently read the first book, the 5th season, which I gave a 4-star to. That was a lot of numbers, but first book in the series got a 4-star. This is the second book, got a 3-star. I enjoyed it a little bit less, and I won't talk too much in depth about it because this is a second book in a series, so it's hard to, go into too much detail without spoiling things. But it picks up exactly where the first book left off, which is nice. It feels like you're just reading this huge saga. This did have second book syndrome to me. That was the main critique, where it felt like things slowed down a lot. In the first book, you're following multiple characters, multiple stories, multiple locations, learning so much about the world and these different types of people and all these different things that are going on. It's a very dynamic story that has an interesting reveal and that opens up a lot of questions. This book continues right off where that one left, and you're reading from a different character's perspective in addition to a main character. So it still has a little bit of that dynamic feeling of like multiple people in multiple places, but it's not as much as the first book was, and there's not as much movement in this book. You're mostly following characters who are rooted in place and they stay in that place for the entirety of the book. And so that made it feel like it slowed down to me. That made me feel like, oh, I want to go like see more of the world. I want to know more of what's going on. I want to understand more. There's still all these questions you're asking. There's a lot about the moon in this book, and I'm like, what's going on with the moon? And it really just feels like it is a connector that is getting you into the next place, like setting up a lot of things to get you into the last book of the trilogy. So I enjoyed it because I enjoy this series in general. It's hard to describe. It's like this apocalyptic landscape where they have these seasons where all these different like catastrophic events happen in the world that make it hard to live. Some people survive the season, some people don't. And there's magic in this book, and there's some magical characters. It's just so obscure. It's like so vague. You're like, what is this even about? I don't even know, but I like reading it. I like following these characters. I know there's weird things going on in the world, and they're trying to stabilize the world, and that's kind of the overarching thing that's going on in the series. But I'm excited to get to the third book in the series. I will say I do appreciate that this was not ridiculously long. I have encountered so many series where the more books you go into the series, they just start getting so long. It really bogs down my progress. It makes it harder when I continue in the series. For this one, all the books are right around 450-ish pages, which is very nice. I do not feel an intimidation factor. I'm ready to jump into the third one. I will probably get to that either in August or September and finish up the series. And then lastly, my 1 5-star book of the month was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is the start of a trilogy, but it's also part of a larger body of work that Robin Hobb has done, where there's like interconnected trilogies and duologies and other series of books that all kind of go together. From what I understand, I honestly haven't looked too far into it because I was just interested in trying Robin Hobb. This was what people say is a good place to start with, and I didn't want to overly intimidate myself with too big of a project, and I'm still not. I'm still like, okay, we're just gonna focus on the trilogy first, because unlike the last book series I was talking about, this one starts to get huge. I got the second book in the series. This is like, a very moderate, normal book. The second book is like 2.5 of these put together. It's already so long just for the second book in a series. But I really enjoyed this. It's quite different from the type of stuff I usually read. If I do venture into fantasy, I feel like it's usually more like romantic-led fantasy, but neither of these fantasy series I'm reading right now are that, and they're both quite different. This one is like a coming-of-age tale, a young boy's coming-of-age tale in like a medieval type landscape, and it just felt nice. It just felt nice to read. This feels like classic storytelling. It is incredibly well written. Robin Hobb's a very talented writer. It also reads a bit dense, not in a way that's inaccessible, but just in a way that takes up a lot of time. I feel like I really got a lot out of every chapter of this book. And so sometimes I would just read a chapter and then that would be it for the day. I'd read a chapter of this and then I'd read another book that I was reading, because there's just so much that happens within each chapter. Each chapter kind of feels like its own short story. It feels very purposeful. It feels like there's a lot going on. There's so much character building. So it just was a book that I like took my time through, and I think that will be how I do with the next one as well, especially since the book's so long. But I like that. It was nice to just go slow with a book It's very immersive and it felt all-consuming when I was reading it too. It's written from this perspective of this guy reflecting on his life. I don't know at what point he is reflecting, if this is like still closer or later in his life, but you know, it's him going back and kind of telling his story from being a young boy at the age of 6 through, I don't know how old he ends up by the end, somewhere between like 11 to 16 by the end of this book. So these are like the childhood, young boy into young teenager years that's covered in this book. And it just feels like, in my mind, when I like think back to how I feel reading this book, I feel like I have like stumbled into a little dark pub and a kind of curmudgeonly guy is on the bar stool beside me and he's like hunched over and sipping some ale, and there's a fire and it's crackling and it's like just dark and moody in there. And then he's like, let me tell you about my life story. And he just goes through and in the most vivid details just talks through all of these things that's happened to him. That is what I feel like. That's like my mind palace when I'm reading this book. And it was just so lovely. It was just a nice little escape. So I am excited to continue in the series. If you haven't read it and you're unfamiliar, it's about this boy named Fitz, who is the bastard son of a prince. And when he is 6 years old, he gets taken from his mother into the care of this other guy who is like the stable man, hound guy, sort of, for the prince that is his father. His prince is the next in line to be king, also importantly. It's about his relationship with that guy Burrick. It's about his relationship with animals. He really loves dogs, and there's a lot of sweet dog moments in here. There's also a lot of sad kind of dog stuff in here too, so warning for that. And it's about his observations of the court world as he's like just this hidden away little bastard hiding in the court, observing the politics, how things are going on, and then this guy secretly takes him under his wing to train him how to be an assassin as well. He's experiencing boyhood and growing up and the court and the politics and having a crush for the first time and learning confidence in himself and skills and learning who to trust and who not to trust. It was just a good time. It was just a good book. It's really, really solid. I am excited to continue in the series and just see where all this world goes. There is a character introduced in this story too who's the fool, like the king's fool, and he is such an interesting character to me. And I know that there's another book in this world, it's called like The Fool's something, and so I'm hoping that's the same. I'm like, I want to know more about that character. I can see that going, you know, in a lot of interesting directions. But yeah, really good. Not a surprise. Everyone says it's really good. It is really good. I'm glad I had that experience. Robin Hobb is clearly very talented, and I will definitely be checking out more. So that's it for all the books that I read in the month of July. Let me know down below in the comments if you've read any of them, and let me know what you think of them. But that'll be it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!